Okay, so now we've done the 2D form. So the 2D proportions, I should say. So now let's talk about taking these proportions that we're thinking about and translating them to a 3D form, because a head uh, actually has mass to it. It has volume to it. Okay. Uh, Always remember also. Always practice, practice, practice. Okay. So don't just think that the information I'm giving you is just magically going to make it work. You got to work with it and actually make it work for you. Okay. So let's go on and actually start talking about this shape. So let's put down the oval again. But now this oval can actually rotate because we're going to think of this as a mass. Okay. So when we talk about thinking of it as a mass, let's say that uh, this is kind of turned and kind of looking up. Okay. So we will still go toward that halfway point, right? But now you're going to create another ellipse through there. And the reason that we're doing this is, let's say the person is kind of looking up to the right. Okay. So now let's build a center line, but the center line actually doesn't go through the center because now we're taking it down to where it's actually cutting down through here. So this point right here is actually that center point that you would actually see right between the eye line right there. And then go to your half split again, and then make another ellipse, okay? Because that cut point right there is the base of the nose. And then again, make a half point split, and then make an ellipse. And then this is that center line that cuts through the mouth. Now this it gets kind of hard to think about this stuff, but really building that form on there is very important. So let's think about first of all coming on the eye line, right, and coming out to where we want to start to build the eye shapes, right? And we're coming on this line to where we are still building forms, okay? So we still have two cut points where we're actually staring out the center and everything, but you also got to think of depth and proportion. So stuff that's closer to us is going to be a little bit bigger. Stuff that's further away from us is going to be a little bit smaller. And this is where it starts to get kind of hairy, because we also got to think about our light sources and stuff like that. But in building this form, start to think of blocking shapes. So if we can see underneath the nose, okay, let's say that we're going to bring this nose out and think about it as kind of a block shape that's coming out, okay, to where we're going to build that nose as a block shape. And we're going to build circles on it, so then we can start to actually build a nose around it. And don't feel afraid to, like, when you're first getting into this stuff, get sloppy with it. I mean, really understanding how to build those forms and everything is very important, and building all those sketch lines so you can actually see cross sections and you can start to really build into this. So if we think about this form coming straight up right here and hitting this point, remember how this actually hits the nose and actually builds that out, right? So that corner right there builds that eye, okay? So think also that this is an eyeball inside here, and it's actually a shape. So in building that shape, it has certain shadows to it too, right? So you can actually start to build that form too. Think of everything that has shape, right? So circles, you need to create a light source and have shadows that get cast by it. So those shadows actually get created on the face itself. And this is what will help you start to understand, like, how you need to build your shadowing, because like if this nose has mass to it, it's going to cast a shadow across the face, correct? So this interior area is going to be dark. Inside a nostril would be really dark, right? So just kind of thinking about those things as a form, you can actually start to think about the things that would actually be created on there. Center of the mouth. Remember, we're building a lip that comes out. Also, we're building a mass here that comes out and then has underside, base of a chin. And see, now this is where it gets a little more difficult, because you got to think about the mass of the cheekbones and everything, but it's also going to be smaller and hidden on this side because it rotates around the head on the other side, right? But you're still always using these baselines that you're kind of thinking of those proportions, so you can still build that stuff out. Because see, we got that center eye there, so we're going to hide the corner because it comes up from the nose and it comes up into there, so it hits right about there. But this eyeball will have a shelf because it does have mass to where that comes down, it comes to a cheekbone. Right. Like I said, really play with this stuff to where you feel better with it and you can start to create more with it. Okay? But in building this mass, like I said, you still use those points of proportion that you feel comfortable with. Like I said, I still use my points of proportion that I'm comfortable with, so you can really build out where you think stuff would go. And I'm not getting too crazy with it because I'm still using those 2D proportions that I mapped out, and I'm just putting them on a form now to where I'm using those same things to create my 3D head. And it's really all about sitting down and getting familiar with those proportions and really thinking about them, so you can constantly reuse them even when you're actually going in and really building out that 3D form. And the reason that this is important is because when you start to use references, not everybody wants to look straight on at you. And it's not really dynamic enough to have people just constantly stare at you straight on, because it doesn't really give a lot of variety to what you're trying to create. So being able to look at them at different angles and everything can help out to create more of that variety. So again, this is just a base form, and it's kind of a very random head. So Might look a little strange, but it also takes time to really put down a better form on that. But there, and you're still using those base proportions, like I said, to really kind of build out the form. And I mean, you can create more depth if you really think about where the shadows would be cast. So if we have a light source coming toward the face in this area right here, we would want to cast a shadow across the back side of stuff, right? So as you think about where the darker parts of this would be, you can start to create a little bit more realism to a certain degree as you logic out the form itself to really create that form. But hopefully that makes sense. And the basis of this, like I said, is because when you start to use your reference photos in the third video, and you start to look at actual people and everything, you have to think about that form, but still kind of break it down using those proportions to really think things through. Because as you do portraiture, you want it a little bit more concise, but when you do caricatures, you will accentuate the features on the person's face. So like if they have bigger than average eyes, you can really exaggerate those eyes. Or if they have a very small nose in comparison to everything else, you can really accentuate how small that nose is in comparison to everything else using those base proportions and everything. It really helps you out. But hopefully this makes sense. And what we're going to do now is we're going to go on to the third video to where I'll pull up a reference photo and everything and show you how you can kind of put it all together and kind of look at all those features and everything and then bring it forth into a portraiture sketch or a caricature itself. As always, don't preach, just teach, and I love y'all, man. And I will see you soon in the third video.